This month, our bookslot focuses on Our Story Heritage series, brought to you by publisher Terence Ball. It's a unique collection of stories that relates to our history. Joining me now in studio to give us insight is publisher Terence Ball. Terence, thank you very much for joining me here.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. It's a pleasure.
I'm loosely talking about, in my introduction, that it's about our history, but it's just so much more.
Well, absolutely. It actually arose from a discussion I was having with some Chitsonga and Tshivenda-speaking friends in a small rural village called Vuani, near Ila Mission. And they were asking me about the history of the first contact between Amashangana and the Vavenda. And I teased them, saying that it surprises me that people who are so respectful of the ancestors know so little about what they do. And Konanani Matiwa said to me, Terence, enough teasing of us now. You know publishing, you know books, you know something about what is happening in our schools, you know a little bit of all of our languages. Why don't you do something about it? And so this series began to take shape in my mind. We know that there is a challenge with issues of literacy in our classrooms. We know that there is an issue also around appropriate reading material for young learners. So the series has been devised as a reading scheme, a reading series, which hopefully is very accessible to children. The series is well illustrated and will give them some knowledge of our incredibly fascinating past.
You've launched 14 of these books in this first series.
Yes.
The importance of it in Heritage Month to talk about this, because there are aspects of our history in Southern Africa that has never been taught to us at a school level.
Absolutely. And when I first started traveling South Africa extensively, rural South Africa, and incidentally I never studied history at school. I have no formal qualification in the subject. But I became fascinated by the relationships between our languages. For instance, in Chitsonga, you can hear the similarity to isiZulu. And I couldn't understand why that was the case until I started finding out about the Battle of Mhlatuzi River. And that was the great battle between Zwide Kalanga, Shoshangan Kanxumalo, Zwangindaba Kajele on the one side, and on the other, of course, Shaka Kasenza Gakona, Namzlikazi Kamashobane. And at that battle, the Ndwandwes were defeated and had to flee from northern KwaZulu-Natal. That is why the Ndwandwes now live in eastern Mpumalanga and northern Swaziland. Wow. That is why Amashangan have moved into Mozambique and then into Limpopo, the far north of Limpopo, and slightly further south, around Tulamahashi and that area. So that's how the story started. I then thought I could do something possibly on Shoshangana, which I did, his grandson Gugunyani.
Yeah.
And then when I looked at the series, the first 4 or 5 titles, I was rather concerned that I would be accused of producing an history of the Nguni, speaking people of South Africa.
Very one-sided.
Exactly. So I thought that I had to extend the series to include other groups. And I have plans to produce another 23 titles.
Yeah, I've got the list in front of me. The other interesting thing that I found about these books was that you also created this map to give you a sense of where it happened and in which part of South Africa. It really is such an educational process, but told in a way that is accessible to absolutely everybody.
That is the intention. It was initially obviously developed with the younger learner in mind. No. But since speaking to people involved in education at a provincial and national level, there's obviously also a keen interest amongst adult educators, because the subject matter is absolutely appropriate for them. And there are so many questions out there about where we came from, how did we get to be here? And those are the stories that I love uncovering and I love to tell.
The other thing that also struck me about this series is the amazing illustrations. And it just enhances every story.
That's exactly the idea, obviously, to lure young readers into the text through those hopefully engaging, captivating illustrations. And we have a number of authors and a number of illustrators as well. And each of the illustrators obviously is selected with, well, hopefully they will have some knowledge of the place where the story is told. For instance, we have used a vendor artist who is familiar with the northeastern Limpopo to do the illustrations for Divanika.
One of the other stuff that I think is very important, you also highlighted about that initially it was created for grades 4 to 9. It was actually approved by the Eastern Department.
Eastern Cape.
Yeah, Eastern Cape. In terms of just rolling it out nationally and exposing it to everybody?
Well, obviously there is a fairly lengthy process of assessment and approval that the Department of Education embarks upon. At this stage, materials that are referred to as supplementary are approved by provincial departments rather than national. So I am engaging with provincial departments, and I'm pleased to say that there has been a good response from people out there. I've had an increasing number of approaches from Amahosi, Amakosi to come and tell their story. The Amagunukweb have sent me an email recently, so that makes me quite proud.
Anybody who wants to get access to the collection, the 14 books in the first series?
Well, from tomorrow, indeed, they'll be available in most bookshops, or available, obviously, through my little operation.
Okay, awesome. And that you can, just to give us the email or a website where people can... info@saheritagepublishers.co.za. As simple as that. Terence Ball in studio talking to us about what I consider to be an amazing offering. It's called Our Story, the Heritage Series, and it looks and it highlights the history of Southern Africa. I think it's going to be a fascinating read for your children, and I think it might spark a couple of debates around the dinner and coffee table. We take an ad break. You don't go anywhere.